Elara's world was a tapestry woven with simple yet profound joys. Her small, sun-drenched apartment, nestled above a charming, independent bookstore, hummed with the quiet melody of her life. As a freelance graphic designer, she found beauty in the mundane, transforming client visions into vibrant realities from her cluttered desk. Her evenings were often spent with Marcus, her fiancé of 2 years, a man whose easy smile and ambitious dreams had captivated her heart. They had plans. Simple at first, a small wedding, perhaps a cozy house with a garden, and the shared dream of one day opening a community art studio. Their love, she believed, was the bedrock upon which their future would be built. A future free from the opulence that defined her older sister, Cassandra, a woman who moved through life as if walking on air, cushioned by inherited wealth and an unshakable sense of superiority, had always been Elara's antithesis. While Elara found contentment in her creative pursuits and modest income, Cassandra chased the glittering allure of high society, her life a constant cascade of lavish parties, designer labels, and global escapades. Their sibling relationship was a fragile thing, stretched thin by Cassandra's thinly veiled disdain for Elara's unambitious existence and Elara's quiet resentment of Cassandra's condescension. Yet Elara had always hoped for a truce, a flicker of genuine connection that never quite materialized. The first cracks in Elara's idyllic world appeared subtly, almost Marcus, once so attentive, began to cancel their dinner dates with increasing frequency, citing urgent business meetings that stretched late into the night. His once-eager calls dwindled to rushed texts, and the warmth in his eyes seemed to dim, replaced by a restless, distant glint. Elara, ever the optimist, dismissed her growing unease as pre-wedding jitters, a natural phase of any relationship. She tried to reignite their spark, cooking his favorite meals, planning weekend getaways. But a wall, invisible yet solid, had begun to rise between them. Little did she know, that wall was built with secrets meticulously constructed brick by the very people she trusted most. The truth, when it finally struck, was not a gentle whisper but a thunderous public roar. It happened at the annual charity gala hosted by the city's elite, an event Elara only attended under duress, dragged along by a persistent Marcus who insisted they network. She felt out of place amidst the shimmering gowns and tailored suits, a lone star in a galaxy of constellations. Marcus had been distant all evening, disappearing for long stretches, only to reappear with a strained smile and vague excuses. Elara had just stepped onto the terrace, seeking a moment of fresh air from the stifling grandeur, when she saw them. Marcus stood beneath a trellis of twinkling lights, his arm wrapped possessively around Cassandra's waist. Cassandra, resplendent, in a sapphire gown that shimmered like liquid moonlight, gazed up at him with an adoring, proprietary smile. The air around them crackled with an undeniable intimacy, an unspoken declaration that froze Elara's blood. Her heart, a moment ago beaten with a nervous rhythm, now pounded a frantic, suffocating drum against her ribs. She watched, unable to move, as Marcus leaned in, whispering something into Cassandra's ear that made her sister laugh, a bright, triumphant sound that echoed through Elara's very soul. Then they saw her. Cassandra's eyes, sharp and predatory, widened in a flash of surprise before narrowing into a cruel smirk. She nudged Marcus, whose head snapped up, his face draining of color. For a split second, a flicker of guilt, or perhaps just apprehension, crossed his features. But then it was gone, replaced by a hardened resolve. He stepped forward, pulling Cassandra with him, their synchronized movement a grotesque dance of betrayal. The murmurs of the crowd, once a distant hum, now seemed to swell, amplifying Elara's humiliation. "Elara Marcus," began, his voice devoid of the tenderness she had known. "I think we need to talk." His tone was cold, clinical, utterly foreign. Cassandra, standing beside him, a hand still linked with his, offered a pitying, yet victorious, smile. Elara's voice, when she finally found it, was a mere croak. "Marcus, what is this?" she whispered, her gaze darting between them, searching for an explanation, a reprieve from the tightening grip of dread. Marcus took a deep breath, his eyes avoiding hers, sweeping over the faces of the curious onlookers who had begun to gather. "Elara, I can't do this anymore. We're not right for each other." He paused. Then, with a brutal finality that tore through her like a blade, he added, "Cassandra and we're getting married." The words hung in the air, heavy with their devastating truth. A collective gasp rippled through the small crowd, followed by a chorus of whispers. Elara felt her knees weaken, the ornate wrought-iron railing the only thing keeping her upright. "Married," Elara repeated, the word tasting like ash on her tongue. Her mind struggled to comprehend, to reconcile the man standing before her with the man who had promised her forever. "How? How could you?" Her voice cracked, tears blurring her vision. Cassandra, seizing the moment, stepped forward, her voice dripping with feigned sympathy. "Oh, Elara, don't make a scene. It's for the best, really. Marcus deserves someone who can truly support his ambitions, someone who understands the demands of his world." She cast a pointed glance at Elara's modest dress, a silent jab at her lack of affluence. Marcus, emboldened by Cassandra's presence, finally met Elara's gaze, his eyes hard and dismissive. "You're a failure, Elara. You always have been. Content with your small life, your small dreams. Cassandra offers a future, not a fantasy. She understands what it takes to succeed." His words, delivered with a callous disregard for her feelings, were a public execution of herself. They stripped away her dignity, laying bare her vulnerability for all to see. The humiliation was a physical force, pressing down on her, stealing her breath. She felt the stares, heard the hushed whispers, each one a nail in the coffin of her broken heart. Her vision swam, the twinkling lights of the terrace blurring into an indistinct haze. The faces of the onlookers, once curious, now seemed to merge into a judgmental blur. She could feel the heat of shame rising in her cheeks, the tremor in her hands. With a desperate, choked sob, Elara turned and fled, pushing past the stunned guests, the sound of Marcus's cruel words echoing in her ears. She ran, blindly, through the opulent halls, down the grand staircase, and out into the cool night air, leaving behind the shattered fragments of her dreams and the public spectacle of her utter devastation. The city lights, usually a comfort, now seemed to mock her, their brilliance a stark contrast to the darkness that had just engulfed her soul. She stumbled through the unfamiliar streets, each step a testament to her brokenness, until she finally reached the solace of her empty apartment, where she collapsed, the crushing blow of betrayal leaving her utterly heartbroken and shamed, a failure in the eyes of the man she loved, and the sister who had always despised her. The days that followed Marcus's brutal betrayal blurred into a monochrome haze of despair. Elara existed in a state of suspended animation, each morning a fresh battle against the crushing weight of heartbreak and humiliation. Her apartment, once a sanctuary of creativity and warmth, now felt like a cage, its walls echoing with the ghost of Marcus's laughter and the phantom scent of his cologne. She barely ate, barely slept. The image of Marcus and Cassandra intertwined beneath the gala lights, playing on an endless, agonizing loop in her mind. Her freelance work, once a source of joy, became an insurmountable chore, her artistic inspiration completely extinguished by the cold ash of her shattered dreams. Deadlines loomed, unanswered emails piled up, and the very act of sitting at her desk, surrounded by her tools, felt like a mockery. Financial strain, a silent predator, began to circle. Her modest income, always enough for her simple needs, was now barely covering rent and utilities, especially after the pre-wedding expenses she and Marcus had incurred. The small savings she had painstakingly built, earmarked for their future home, had been significantly depleted. With her work suffering, the flow of new clients dwindled to a trickle, pushing her further into a precarious financial situation. She started skipping meals, turning off lights to save electricity, and avoiding any unnecessary spending. The shame of her public breakup was compounded by the gnawing anxiety of potential insolvency. She, who had always prided herself on her independence, now felt adrift, without an anchor in the turbulent waters of her life. The public scrutiny was relentless, a cruel extension of her initial humiliation. Gossip spread like wildfire through their shared social circles, fueled by Cassandra's triumphant whispers and Marcus's carefully crafted narrative. Friends, or those she had once considered friends, offered pitying glances, or worse, awkward silences. Some dared to offer unsolicited advice, suggesting she move on, implying she was somehow at fault for not being enough. Social media, a platform she once used to share her art, became a digital minefield. Marcus and Cassandra, seemingly oblivious to the pain they had inflicted, flaunted their new relationship with an almost sadistic glee. Engagement announcements, lavish parties, exotic honeymoon plans, each post a dagger twisted deeper into Elara's already bleeding heart. They were everywhere, their smiling faces plastered across her feed, a constant, undeniable reminder of her replacement, her failure. Each glimpse of their perfect, manufactured happiness deepened her despair. She felt worthless, unlovable, her self-esteem utterly annihilated. The label failure, flung at her by Marcus, had burrowed deep into her psyche, festering like an open wound. She began to believe it, internalizing his cruel judgment as an undeniable truth. What was she now? A discarded fiancé, a struggling artist, a woman whose sister had stolen her life. The future, once a canvas of endless possibilities, now stretched before her as a vast, empty void. There were moments, dark and suffocating, when the thought of simply giving up, of retreating entirely from a world that seemed determined to crush her, became a seductive whisper in her mind. She would sit by her window, staring out at the bustling street below, feeling utterly disconnected, a ghost in her own life. Yet, beneath the layers of grief and self-doubt, a tiny, defiant spark refused to be extinguished. It was a flicker of the old Elara, the one who found strength in adversity, who believed in her own resilience. It was a quiet voice, buried deep, reminding her that she was more than the sum of her betrayals. She couldn't articulate it, couldn't yet act on it, but the seed of self-preservation, however small, remained. She found herself, almost unconsciously, seeking out small comforts, a forgotten book, a familiar melody, the warmth of a mug of tea, tiny anchors in the storm. One dreary afternoon, as Elara sat amidst the chaotic disarray of her apartment, a sharp knock startled her. She rarely received visitors anymore. Through the peephole, she saw a delivery person holding a slim, cream-colored envelope. Her name was elegantly inscribed on the front, beneath a prestigious-looking letterhead. It was from Sterling & Associates, attorneys at law. Her brow furrowed in confusion. She had never had dealings with a law firm, certainly not one that appeared so high-end. Her first thought was that it must be related to Marcus, perhaps a demand for the return of the engagement ring, or some other legal formality associated with their broken engagement. A fresh wave of nausea washed over her. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside, a formal letter, printed on heavy stock, awaited. It stated, in precise, legalistic language, that she was requested to attend a meeting at their offices regarding the estate of a deceased relative. The name of the deceased was unfamiliar to Elara. Distant branch of a family tree she barely remembered, if at all. Eleanor say the letter was polite, yet firm, emphasizing the urgency of her presence. It hinted at an unforeseen twist, a development that, despite her current despair, managed to pique a sliver of her dormant curiosity. Who was Eleanor Vance? And why was a prestigious law firm contacting her about an inheritance, especially when her own life felt so bereft of hope? The letter, a stark contrast to the emptiness of her present, felt like a bizarre intrusion, a mysterious anomaly in the desolate landscape of her existence. She stared at the elegant script, a strange mixture of apprehension and a faint, almost imperceptible tremor of anticipation stirring within her. It was a flicker of something new, something entirely unexpected, in a life that had, until now, been defined only by loss. The address on the letter led Elara to a towering skyscraper in the heart of the city's financial district, a gleaming monolith of glass and steel that seemed to whisper of power and wealth. She felt acutely out of place, her worn coat and unassuming demeanor a stark contrast to the sleek, impeccably dressed individuals who flowed in and out of the building. Her anxiety mounted with each ascending floor of the elevator, her mind racing through every possible scenario, each one more daunting than the last. Was it a mistake, a prank, or perhaps a distant, forgotten relative who had left her a small, symbolic trinket? She braced herself for disappointment, unwilling to let even a sliver of hope take root in her still fragile heart. Sterling and Associates occupied the entire top floor. Their reception area, a study in understated luxury, polished marble, muted lighting, and a hushed atmosphere that spoke of serious business. A polite, efficient receptionist directed her to a spacious office overlooking the city, where a distinguished-looking man with silver hair and kind, intelligent eyes rose to greet her. "Miss Vance," he said, extending a warm hand. "I'm Arthur Sterling. Thank you for coming." His voice was calm, reassuring, a balm to Elara's frayed nerves. She settled into a plush leathered chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her gaze fixed on the lawyer. Mr. Sterling began by explaining the purpose of the meeting, his tone measured and professional. He spoke of a distant relative, a great-aunt, named Eleanor Vance, who had recently passed away at the venerable age of 90. Elara vaguely remembered her mother mentioning an eccentric great-aunt who had chosen a life of extreme a woman who had severed ties with most of the family decades ago. She had been described as a recluse, a spinster, who had lived in a sprawling, forgotten estate on the outskirts of the city, a place whispered about in hushed tones during family gatherings. Elara had always imagined her as a character from a Gothic novel, a phantom from a forgotten past. Eleanor Vance, Mr. Sterling continued, was a woman of remarkable foresight and exceptional business acumen. Despite her reclusive nature, she invested shrewdly and extensively over the decades, building a considerable fortune through various ventures, including early investments in technology and real estate. He paused, allowing the information to sink in. Her will was quite specific. Miss Vance. After careful consideration, she designated you Elara Vance as the sole beneficiary of her entire estate. Elara felt a jolt, a surge of adrenaline that made her heart pound against her ribs. Sole beneficiary of a considerable fortune. It sounded too fantastical, too impossible. "Me?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "But why me? I barely knew her." "I don't understand." Mr. Sterling offered a gentle smile. "It appears, Miss Vance, that your great-aunt had a particular affection for you. She recalled a brief encounter from your childhood, a moment where you displayed a kindness and genuine spirit that resonated deeply with her. She also, quite frankly, expressed a profound disapproval of certain materialistic tendencies within the other branches of the family, specifically your sister's lineage. She believed you possessed a true heart, untainted by avarice, and wished for her legacy to empower someone who would use it wisely and with integrity." He then slid a document across the polished table, a thick, bound folder. "The estate, Miss Vance, comprises a diversified portfolio of assets, including significant real estate holdings, various company shares, and a substantial trust fund. After all deductions and taxes, the net value of your inheritance is approximately $2 billion. $2 billion. The words hit Elara like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Her mind reeled, struggling to process the sheer magnitude of the number. $2 billion. It wasn't a small sum, a comfortable nest egg. It was an empire, a fortune beyond her wildest imaginings. Her modest apartment, her struggling freelance career, her recent financial anxieties, they all seemed to shrink into insignificance against the colossal shadow of this revelation. She felt a wave of dizziness, the room seeming to spin around her. $2 billion, she repeated, her voice hoarse with disbelief. Are you sure? Is this some kind of joke?" Mr. Sterling's expression remained calm, his eyes earnest. "I assure you, Miss Vance, this is entirely legitimate. My firm has managed Eleanor's affairs for over 30 years. The documentation is all here." He gestured to the folder. "This inheritance is yours, free and clear." He then proceeded to explain the intricate details of the estate, the various legal processes, and the logistical steps involved in transferring such an immense fortune. He spoke of discreet financial advisors, security protocols, and the absolute necessity of maintaining confidentiality, at least for the initial period. "Such a significant sum can attract unwanted attention, Ms. Vance," he advised, his tone growing more serious. "Discretion will be paramount as you navigate this new reality." Elara listened, or tried to, her mind still grappling with the impossible. The gravity of the situation slowly began to sink in. A heavy, yet exhilarating weight. This wasn't just money. It was freedom, power, opportunity. It was a complete, seismic shift in the trajectory of her life. A sudden, blinding light in the darkness that had consumed her. As she finally stood to leave, the world outside the law firm's office seemed to shimmer with a new, vibrant intensity. The bustling city, once a backdrop to her despair, now pulsed with 1,000 possibilities. She walked out onto the street in a daze, the weight of $2 billion settling upon her shoulders, a secret that would forever change her, and unknowingly, the lives of those who had so cruelly dismissed her. The air felt crisper, the sunlight brighter, and for the first time in weeks Elara felt a faint, tremulous stir of hope, a whisper of a future she could barely yet comprehend. Stepping out of Sterling and Associates, Elara found the bustling city streets transformed. The noise, once an irritating cacophony, now hummed with a vibrant energy. The towering buildings, once symbols of an inaccessible world, now seemed to bow before her with newfound respect. Her mind, a whirl of disbelief and nascent excitement, struggled to process the seismic shift that had just occurred. $2 billion. The words echoed in her thoughts, a refrain that felt both surreal and utterly undeniable. Her first primal instinct was a powerful surge of vindication, the urge to march straight to Marcus and Cassandra, to throw her newfound wealth in their smug, arrogant faces, was almost overwhelming. She imagined their shock, their dawning horror, the sweet taste of their humiliation. But as quickly as the thought arose, it receded, replaced by a deeper, more profound realización. Revenge, she understood, was a fleeting satisfaction, a momentary triumph that would ultimately leave her feeling hollow. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about Asterisk. Her Asterisk. She walked for hours. Aimlessly at first, then with a growing sense of purpose. The initial shock gave way to a quiet resolve, a fierce determination to wield this unexpected power with dignity and integrity. Mr. Sterling's advice about discretion resonated deeply. She didn't want pity, nor did she want to become a target for opportunists. More importantly, she wanted to rebuild her life on her own terms, to prove to herself, not to them, that she was capable of greatness, that her value was intrinsic, not defined by her wealth or the opinions of others. This wasn't a lottery win. It was a trust, a legacy, and she intended to honor it. Her first practical step was to secure her finances. Under Mr. Sterling's guidance, she discreetly set up new accounts, diversified her investments, and began a meticulous process of transferring her vast inheritance. She hired a team of trusted financial advisors, not just to manage her wealth, but to educate her, to empower her to make informed decisions. She immersed herself in learning, devouring books on economics, market trends, and philanthropy. The dizzying world of high finance, once completely foreign, slowly began to make sense. Each new piece of knowledge, a brick in the foundation of her new future. With her financial anxieties, memory, Elara finally allowed herself to dream again, but this time without limitations. What had she always wanted to do? The community art studio she and Marcus had once dreamed of now seemed too small, too constrained. Her passion for design, for art that could make a difference, began to crystallize into a more ambitious vision. She envisioned a platform that would champion emerging artists, particularly those from marginalized communities, providing them with resources, exposure, and voice. She wanted to build something real, something that would contribute meaningfully to the world, not just accumulate more wealth. Self-improvement became her immediate focus. The emotional wounds inflicted by Marcus and Cassandra were still raw, but now, armed with a new sense of purpose and the means to heal, she sought out therapy. It wasn't about erasing the past, but about processing the trauma, reclaiming her narrative, and building an unshakable sense of self. She enrolled in business courses, sharpening her acumen, learning about leadership, marketing, and strategic planning. She took up new hobbies, learning a new language, exploring international cuisine, even trying her hand at advanced coding, expanding her horizons, and rediscovering the joy of learning. Her mind, once clouded by despair, now felt sharp, engaged, and hungry for knowledge. Her living situation was the next logical step. Her old apartment, while holding sentimental value, was now a constant reminder of her past pain and her former constrained life. It was also too exposed, too close to the circles Marcus and Cassandra frequented. With careful discretion, she found a new apartment, not overtly lavish, but significantly more spacious, secure, and located in a more private, upscale neighborhood across town. It was a fresh start, a blank canvas upon which she could paint her new life. She didn't buy designer furniture. Instead, she invested in timeless pieces, art that resonated with her soul, creating a space that felt truly her own, a reflection of her evolving identity. As the weeks turned into months, Elara felt a profound transformation taking root within her. The weight of responsibility that came with her inheritance was immense, but it was also empowering. She was no longer a victim of circumstance, but the architect of her own destiny. The quiet resolve she had found on that fateful day after meeting Mr. Sterling had deepened into an unshakable inner strength. She wasn't seeking immediate revenge. She was building a future so rich, so full-feeling, that the past would simply fade into her focus was inward, on growth, on healing, on becoming the woman she was always meant to be. The secret of her inheritance was not a weapon to be wielded in anger, but a tool to forge a new horizon, one built on her terms, far beyond the petty concerns of those who had once called her a failure. The changes in Elara were subtle at first, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, yet undeniably present. It wasn't a dramatic overhaul, but a gradual blossoming, like a rare flower unfurling its petals after a long winter. Her wardrobe, once practical and unassuming, now featured pieces that were elegantly tailored, crafted from luxurious fabrics, chosen for their quality and timeless design rather than their brand name. Her hair, once simply styled, now fell in soft, sophisticated waves, framing a face that had shed the shadows of despair. Her skin, no longer dulled by stress and sleepless nights, possessed a natural, healthy glow. But the most striking transformation was in her demeanor. A newfound confidence in her posture, a quiet grace in her movements, and a clear, unwavering light in her eyes that spoke of inner peace and undeniable strength. Her former acquaintances and colleagues, those she still occasionally encountered, began to notice. "Elara, you look wonderful," a former co-worker remarked at a chance encounter in a coffee shop, their voice laced with genuine surprise. "Have you lost weight?" another friend from her old art group inquired, her gaze lingering on Elara's radiant complexion. "You seem so happy, so different." A neighbor from her old apartment building commented, a hint of curiosity in their tone. Elara would offer a polite, enigmatic smile. "Just taking better care of myself," she'd reply, her voice calm and composed. "New outlook on life, I suppose." She never elaborated, never offered details, her vague answers serving to deepen the mystery surrounding her transformation. Her ex-fiancé, Marcus, and her sister, Cassandra, however, were far less perceptive, their arrogance clouding their judgment. They occasionally crossed paths with Elara, at mutual acquaintances gatherings, or at city events where Cassandra's family held sway. Each time, they would attempt to dismiss her, to reinforce their imagined superiority. One evening, at an upscale gallery opening, Elara, now a quiet patron of the arts, found herself inadvertently in their orbit. Marcus, his arm draped possessively around Cassandra's waist, spotted her across the crowded room. His eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something akin to recognition, quickly replaced by a dismissive sneer. "Look who it is," Cassandra drawled, her voice a theatrical whisper that was just loud enough to be overheard by those nearby. "Still, trying to make it in the art world? Darling, such a quaint little dream." She airily waved a hand, as if dismissing Elara's entire existence. Marcus, puffing out his chest, chimed in. "Some people just never learn, do they? Content to dabble, while others build empires." He chuckled, a condescending sound that grated on Elara's ears, but no longer pierced her heart. They still saw her as the failure, the same woman they had so cruelly abandoned, failing to grasp the profound metamorphosis she had undergone. Elara, however, merely met their gaze with a serene, unreadable expression. She offered a small, polite nod, a barely perceptible curve of her lips that contained no anger, no resentment, only a quiet understanding. "Good evening, Marcus Cassandra," she said, her voice soft but steady. "The exhibition is quite stunning, isn't it?" She made no attempt to engage in their petty jabs. No need to explain herself, her newfound poise an impenetrable shield. Her composure, her utter lack of reaction, seemed to disarm them. They had expected tears, anger, or at the very least, a desperate attempt to engage. Instead, they were met with an almost regal indifference. Cassandra's triumphant smile faltered for a moment, a tiny wrinkle of confusion appearing between her perfectly sculpted brows. Marcus's chest seemed to deflate slightly, his confident smirk replaced by a fleeting look of bewilderment. They exchanged a puzzled glance, unsure how to interpret Elara's changed demeanor. Was she putting on a brave face, or had something genuinely shifted? They quickly dismissed the thought, attributing it to Elara's stubbornness, or perhaps a new, temporary infatuation. "Well, don't let us keep you from your artistic musings, Elara," Cassandra said, her voice regaining its sharp edge, though it lacked its usual conviction. "Some of us have actual business to discuss." Elara merely inclined her head, a silent acknowledgement, and gracefully turned away, melting back into the crowd of art enthusiasts. She left them standing there, a bewildered and slightly unnerved pair, the seed of doubt subtly planted in their arrogant minds. Their dismissive remarks, "On se sopoten," now held no power over her. Inside, Elara felt a quiet satisfaction, a profound sense of empowerment. They had no idea. They had no conception of the silent transformation brewing beneath the surface, the immense power she now held. Her secret, a wellspring of potential, remained hers alone, a silent promise of a future reveal that would shake their carefully constructed world to its very core. While Marcus and Cassandra remained blissfully ignorant, blinded by their own self. Elara's transformation moved far beyond superficial changes. Her quiet resolve had blossomed into an unwavering determination, fueled by her profound inheritance. She understood that true success wasn't simply about having money. It was about leveraging it, investing it wisely, and building something of lasting value. She wasn't just spending, she was building an empire, brick by meticulously placed brick, all behind the scenes, far from the prying eyes of her former Her long-dormant dream of championing art and creativity now took a concrete, ambitious form. Instead of a small community studio, she established Luminara Collective, a venture designed to discover, cultivate, and promote emerging artists from diverse backgrounds who struggled for recognition. Luminara wasn't just a gallery. It was a multifaceted platform encompassing an online art marketplace, a mentorship program, and a publishing house for art books and critical essays. Elara poured her heart and intellect into it, working tirelessly alongside her growing team, proving that her success was born not just from wealth, but from her innate talent and fierce work ethic. She was no longer just a graphic designer. She was a CEO, an entrepreneur, a visionary. Her days were a whirlwind of meetings with gallerists, investors, and artists. She learned to navigate complex contracts, to understand market trends, and to lead with both compassion and strategic acumen. There were challenges. Of course, the art world was notoriously competitive, and launching a new venture, even with significant capital, required relentless effort and resilience. She faced skepticism, bureaucratic hurdles, and the inevitable setbacks that come with any ambitious undertaking. A major launch event for Luminara nearly fell apart due to supply chain issues, and a key artist almost pulled out due to a rival offer. But Elara, drawing on her newly forged inner strength, met each obstacle with a calm resolve, finding innovative solutions and rallying her team with quiet confidence. She hired a team of dedicated professionals, not just based on their resumes, but on their shared passion for art and their belief in Luminara's mission. She fostered a collaborative environment, valuing every voice, every perspective. Her approach was refreshingly human, a stark contrast to the cutthroat corporate world she was learning to navigate. She mentored young talents personally, guiding them through the often intimidating landscape of the art industry, sharing her own experiences, both triumphs and failures. Her network expanded exponentially, connecting her with influential figures in the art, business, and philanthropic sectors. Individuals who respected her for her vision and her genuine commitment, not for the whispers of her wealth. Slowly but surely, Luminara Collective began to flourish. Its online marketplace gained traction, connecting artists with a global audience. The mentorship program began producing critically acclaimed talents, some of whom were featured in prestigious publications. The publishing arm released its first series of books, receiving rave reviews for their innovative design and insightful content. Elara's vision was being realized. Piece by glorious piece, profits began to materialize, not just as numbers on a ledger, but as tangible proof of her success, allowing her to expand Luminara's reach and impact even further. Her personal life, too, had transformed. She cultivated new friendships, genuine connections with people who knew nothing of her past trauma or her vast fortune, valuing her for her intelligence, kindness, and wit. She traveled not for lavish vacations, but to explore diverse art scenes, to find new talents, and to expand her understanding of global cultures. Her new apartment, once just a safe haven, now felt like a home, filled with the art she loved and the quiet hum of her fulfilling new life. She still maintained discretion about the true source of her wealth, allowing Luminara Collective to be known for its innovative approach and artistic merit, rather than as a rich woman's pet project. Her name, Elara Vance, was becoming synonymous with creativity, integrity, and success. But the full scope of her personal fortune remained a well-guarded secret, a powerful, unspoken truth that hummed beneath the surface of her burgeoning empire. She was not merely surviving. She was thriving, building a legacy that transcended mere monetary value, a testament to her resilience and the strength of her spirit. The Grand Benefactors Ball, an annual cornerstone of the city's philanthropic calendar, shimmered with an understated elegance. This year, Elara attended not as an awkward guest, but as a respected figure, a major donor, and a representative of Luminara Collective, which was quickly gaining renown for its impactful work in the arts. She moved through the opulent ballroom with a newfound grace, her evening gown a testament to sophisticated simplicity, her smile genuine as she greeted prominent collectors and influential philanthropists. She was in her element, discussing Luminara's latest initiatives, her passion for empowering artists shining through every word. Midway through the evening, as she was engaged in a lively discussion about a groundbreaking new exhibition, a familiar, grating voice cut through the hum of conversation. Well, look, who decided to grace us with her presence? Elara turned, her expression composed, to see Marcus and Cassandra approaching. Cassandra, draped in a gown that shrieked of expensive flashiness, clutched Marcus's arm, her eyes glinting with a mixture of surprise and disdain. Marcus, looking slightly less self-assured than usual, offered a forced, almost nervous smile. They were clearly shocked to see Elara in such an exclusive setting, assuming she had merely managed to slip in or was accompanying a more important guest. Elara, Cassandra purred, her tone dripping with feigned sweetness. "Still playing the socialite, I see. Or are you here to sketch the comeuppance for your next project?" She cast a dismissive glance at Elara Elegant, RTV, clearly trying to find fault to reduce her to her former failure status. Marcus, emboldened by Cassandra's lead, chuckled humorlessly. "I suppose even the art world has its hangar zone, doesn't it?" Still. Dreaming of that big break, Elara. His voice carried a condescending edge, a clear attempt to put her back in her perceived place. Elara met their gaze, her eyes serene, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. The barbs, once so potent, now felt like distant whispers, completely devoid of power. She felt no anger, only a quiet understanding of their persistent arrogance. "Good evening, Marcus, Cassandra," she replied, her voice calm and clear, utterly devoid of the emotion they clearly expected. "It's lovely to see you both enjoying the evening. The benefactor's ball is always such a magnificent event, isn't it?" She paused, then added, with a subtle shift in her gaze that held a hint of knowing, "I'm actually here representing Luminara Collective. We're discussing a potential partnership with the Foundation for our upcoming international residency program." The air around them seemed to thicken. Cassandra's perfectly poised smile faltered, her eyes widening slightly. Marcus's forced joviality vanished, replaced by a look of bewildered confusion. Luminara Collective, the name was becoming increasingly prominent in the city's cultural circles, whispered about as an innovative force. They knew it, but had never connected it to Elara, the failure they had discarded. They had imagined her still struggling, still mired in her small, insignificant life. "Luminara Collective," Marcus repeated, his voice betraying a hint of genuine surprise. You're involved with that?" Cassandra quickly recovered, a dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, Elara, please, a small sponsorship. I'm sure, don't try to inflate your importance." Her words, however, lacked their usual bite, a subtle tremor of uncertainty undermining her confidence. They expected her to be flustered, to stutter, to explain herself. Instead, Elara simply maintained her composure, her eyes holding a deeper, unreadable knowledge. "Indeed," Elara replied, her voice unwavering. "Luminara is quite dear to me. We're growing rapidly, and our mission to support artistic innovation is gaining significant traction." She then turned her attention back to the group she had been speaking with, offering a polite, almost imperceptible nod to Marcus and Cassandra. "Please, excuse me. I must return to my discussion. It was interesting seeing you both." With that, she gracefully disengaged, her back straight, her head held high, leaving her ex-fiancé and sister standing alone, utterly bewildered. Amidst the glittering crowd, Marcus and Cassandra watched her walk away, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning unease. "What was that about?" Marcus mumbled, a crease forming between his brows. "She seemed different, so confident." Cassandra scoffed, trying to regain her composure. "Nonsense. She's just putting on a show, probably trying to impress some rich old man." But even as she spoke the words, a tiny, unsettling doubt gnawed at her. Elara's demeanor had been too calm to self-assured. Her eyes had held a depth they couldn't fathom, a quiet power that was both enigmatic and slightly unnerving. The encounter, brief and seemingly innocuous, had planted a seed of curiosity, an uncomfortable realization that the Elara they thought they knew was no longer the woman they saw. It was a subtle, yet potent, victory for Elara, fueling her resolve for the grand revelation that was yet to come. Months later, the city buzzed with anticipation for an event unlike any other. Elara, through Luminara Collective, was orchestrating a monumental gala. Not merely a charity event, but the official launch of the Eleanor Vance Foundation for the Arts, named in honor of her reclusive This foundation, entirely funded by a substantial portion of Elara Isenetitans, was dedicated to providing grants, scholarships, and resources to struggling artists globally. The gala was to be its inaugural fundraising event, a dazzling spectacle designed to draw attention to its noble cause and, for Elara, to mark the full public unveiling of her transformed reality. Invitations, exquisitely designed by Elara herself, were sent to the city's most influential figures, renowned artists, and prominent philanthropists. Among them, a personal invitation found its way to Marcus and Cassandra. They received it with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. The Eleanor Vance Foundation. Cassandra scoffed, scrutinizing the embossed card. Who even is that? And Elara Vance is on the host committee. She must be volunteering to serve drinks. Marcus, however, felt a prickle of unease. The name Luminara Collective was now everywhere, and Elara's previous composure at the benefactor's ball had left a lingering, unsettling impression. Curiosity, mingled with a faint obligation due to their social standing, ultimately compelled them to accept. The night of the gala arrived, and the city's grandest historic hall was transformed into a breathtaking tableau of elegance and artistic wonder. Velvet drapes in deep sapphire and emerald cascaded from the ceilings, illuminated by soft, golden light. Original masterpieces from Luminara's roster of artists adorned the walls, each one a testament to Elara's discerning eye and the Foundation's mission. Live classical music filled the air, mingling with the sophisticated chatter of the impeccably dressed guests. The atmosphere crackled with a palpable sense of anticipation, a feeling that something truly significant was about to unfold. Marcus and Cassandra arrived, their usual air of haughty confidence slightly diminished by the sheer scale of the event. They were impressed, despite themselves. "This is elaborate," Cassandra murmured, her eyes sweeping over the magnificent decor. "More than I would expect from a little art projects." Marcus nodded, a frown of confusion on his face. She must have found some incredibly wealthy backer. This is beyond anything she could have pulled off on her own. Still clung to their narrative, refusing to believe Elara could be the orchestrator of such grandeur. They mingled, searching for the true hosts, for the familiar faces of the city's old money, but found themselves consistently returning to the central figure of the evening. Elara was everywhere, a radiant vision in a shimmering, emerald-green gown that seemed to capture and reflect the light. She moved with effortless confidence, greeting esteemed guests, conversing with renowned artists, her laughter light and genuine. She was clearly the focal point, the undeniable hostess of the evening. Yet Marcus and Cassandra still couldn't reconcile this poised, powerful woman with the failure they had publicly scorned. They exchanged polite, if strained, nods with her as she passed, Elara's eyes holding a knowing, almost sympathetic gleam that unnerved them deeply. They felt like outsiders, observers in a world where Elara now commanded the center stage. The evening progressed with a seamless flow of cocktails, gourmet canapés, and hushed conversations. Speeches by various art luminaries lauded Luminara Collective's impact and the promise of the new Eleanor Vance Foundation. Each speaker seemed to build the tension, hinting at the immense potential of the foundation and the extraordinary vision behind it. Marcus and Cassandra, finding themselves increasingly isolated in their bewildered skepticism, grew more and more uncomfortable. They noticed the admiring glances, the respectful nods directed at Elara, the way she effortlessly commanded attention and respect from figures far more influential than themselves. Finally, the moment arrived. The lights dimmed slightly, and a hush fell over the grand hall. A distinguished figure, the mayor of the city, stepped onto the main stage, a spotlight illuminating him. He began to speak, his voice resonating with authority and admiration. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate not just art, but the boundless spirit of generosity and vision. And it is my distinct honor to introduce to you the driving force, the unwavering heart, behind both Luminara Collective and the magnificent Eleanor Vance Foundation. She is a woman who has, in a remarkably short time, transformed the landscape of our city's cultural scene. Please join me in welcoming Elara Vance." A thunderous applause erupted, and Elara, with a serene smile, walked confidently onto the stage. Marcus and Cassandra watched, their hearts beginning to pound. with a sickening realization. The tension in the room was palpable, not just from the anticipation of Elara's speech, but from the unspoken, growing dread in the hearts of her former tormentors. The stage was set. The spotlight was hers, and the grand revelation was now, irrevocably, upon them. The applause for Elara was deafening, a wave of admiration and respect that reverberated through the grand hall. She stood on stage, bathed in the gentle glow of the spotlight, her emerald gown shimmering, her presence radiating a quiet power. Her eyes swept across the faces in the audience, lingering for just a fraction of a second on Marcus and Cassandra, who sat frozen in their seats, their expressions a grotesque mixture of confusion and growing dread. Elara began her speech, her voice clear and resonant, imbued with a newfound confidence that captivated every ear. She spoke of her passion for art, of the transformative power of creativity, and of her vision for the Eleanor Vance Foundation. She recounted the journey of Luminara Collective, detailing its successes, its impact, and the lives it had touched. Her words were gracious, humble, yet undeniably powerful, painting a vivid picture of a woman who had built an empire from the ground up, driven by purpose rather than personal gain. Then she paused, taking a deep breath, her gaze once again sweeping over the room. Many of you know me as the founder of Luminara Collective, and now as the chair of the Eleanor Vance Foundation, she began, her voice softening slightly. But what many of you may not know is the story behind how this foundation came to be, and indeed, how I, a once struggling graphic designer, found myself in a position to pursue such ambitious dreams. A hush fell over the audience, a collective leaning forward, sensing the personal narrative about to unfold. Just a few years ago, Elara continued, her voice steady despite the raw emotion threaded through her words, I found myself at a crossroads. My life, as I knew it, had shattered. I had been publicly humiliated, abandoned by the man I loved for my own sister, and called a failure to my face. My self-worth was in tatters. My future seemed bleak, and I truly believed I had lost everything. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd, a collective gasp of sympathy and understanding. Marcus and Cassandra stiffened, their faces draining of color, the pieces of their past cruelty beginning to click into place, forming a horrifying mosaic. Elara's eyes, bright and unwavering, met theirs across the room, holding no malice, only a profound sense of self-possession. But what my former fiancé and my sister didn't know, she stated, her voice imbued with a quiet triumph, was that a secret, long held by a distant relative, was about to change everything. My great-aunt, Eleanor Vance, a woman I barely knew, and who lived a life of quiet reclusion, passed away and, to my utter shock and disbelief, left me her entire estate, an inheritance so substantial, so life-altering, that it allowed me to not only rebuild my life, but to finally pursue the dreams I always held on my own terms. She paused, allowing the gravity of her words to sink in, the sheer magnitude of the reveal. Gasps echoed through the room, followed by a sudden burst of excited whispers. The mayor, who had introduced her, smiled knowingly from the side of the stage. Elara then continued, detailing the specific impact of the inheritance. This extraordinary gift, valued at over $2 billion, was not a means for petty revenge, but a catalyst for profound transformation. It became the bedrock upon which Luminara Collective was built, and it is the sole endowment for the Eleanor Vance Foundation, ensuring that our mission to uplift and empower artists will continue for generations to come. The revelation hung in the air, a thunderclap of undeniable truth. The entire room erupted in a new, even more fervent wave of applause, mingled with excited chatter and exclamations of amazement. All eyes, it seemed, turned towards Marcus and Cassandra, who sat utterly. Their faces were a canvas of escalating horror. Marcus's jaw hung slack, his eyes wide with disbelief, then a dawning, sickening regret. Cassandra's perfectly made-up face contorted, her initial shock giving way to a furious, humiliated rage. The realization that Elara, the failure they had scorned, was now a billionaire philanthropist. Celebrated host of this magnificent event, the woman they had so spectacularly underestimated hit them with the force of a physical blow. The memories of their cruel words, their dismissive actions, their public flaunting of their shallow happiness must have flashed through their minds, each moment now amplified by the stark contrast of Elara's magnificent triumph. The full scope of her secret inheritance and achievements became undeniably clear to everyone present, painting them as the petty, short-sighted villains they truly were. Elara concluded her speech with a message of resilience, of finding strength in adversity, and of the true meaning of success. As she stepped back from the podium, the standing ovation was not just for her success, but for her dignity, her unwavering spirit, and the breathtaking irony of her destiny. Marcus and Cassandra, utterly stunned and publicly humiliated, could only watch, their world crumbling around them, as Elara, the woman they had tried to break, shone brighter than any star. The morning after the Eleanor Vance Foundation Gala, news of Elara's astounding inheritance and her meteoric rise spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with headlines, articles, and breathless commentary. From abandoned fiancé to billionaire philanthropist, Elara Vance's unbelievable story screamed one digital banner: the silent empire. How a secret inheritance changed everything for Elara Vance, proclaimed another. Her story became the talk of the town, a modern-day fairy tale of resilience and unexpected fortune, captivating everyone who heard it. For Marcus and Cassandra, the aftermath was swift and brutal. Their faces, captured in various states of shock and disbelief during Elara's speech, became viral memes, symbols of hubris and regret. The public, once merely curious, now turned judgmental, their carefully curated image of a glamorous, successful couple shattered, replaced by a scathing narrative of gold-digging and cruelty. Friends, eager to distance themselves from the unfolding scandal, suddenly found themselves too busy for calls or invitations. Business associates, wary of associating with such a tarnished reputation, slowly began to withdraw their offers and partnerships. Cassandra's family, once a source of unwavering support, expressed their profound disappointment and embarrassment, their social standing taking a significant hit due to their daughter's callous actions. The strain on Marcus and Cassandra's relationship, already built on a shaky foundation of convenience and superficiality, became unbearable. Cassandra, furious at the public humiliation and the unexpected turn of events, lashed out at Marcus Ufol. She shrieked during one of their many escalating arguments. "You picked the wrong sister. You abandoned a billionaire For me, my family's money is nothing compared to that asterisk." Her accusations were laced with a venomous regret, blaming him entirely for his colossal mischief. Marcus, in turn, resented Cassandra's own arrogance, her inability to see beyond Elara's modest facade, and her family's sudden withdrawal of their once lavish financial support. Their public displays of affection turned into bitter, whispered arguments, their lavish lifestyle now feeling hollow and precarious, driven by a desperate, misguided hope. Marcus attempted to reach out to Elara. He sent remorseful texts, left heartfelt and undeniably self-serving voicemails, even tried to appear at her office, hoping for a chance to explain or, perhaps, to rekindle a connection with her newly powerful self. Each attempt was met with a polite but firm wall of silence. Elara, or more precisely, her legal team, ensured that all communication was intercepted and politely rebuffed. She had moved past the need for confrontation or even acknowledgement. Her peace was far too valuable to be disturbed by the ghosts of her past. Meanwhile, Elara embraced her new life with a profound sense of peace and genuine happiness. The healing of old wounds was complete. Replaced by a quiet strength and an unshakable inner calm, she channeled her energy into the Eleanor Vance Foundation, expanding its reach, funding innovative projects, and making a tangible difference in the lives of countless artists. Her days were filled with meaningful work, intellectual engagement, and the satisfaction of contributing positively to the world. She was no longer defined by the betrayal, but by her resilience, her vision, and her integrity. Amidst this new chapter, Elara found love again, a relationship built on a foundation of mutual respect, genuine admiration, and shared values. He was Liam, a brilliant architect involved in sustainable urban development, whom she had met at a philanthropic conference. Liam was kind, intelligent, and saw Elara not as a billionaire, but as the compassionate, driven, and brilliant woman she truly was. He knew her story, but it was her character, her spirit, and her unwavering commitment to making a difference that captivated him. Their bond was authentic, a stark contrast to the performative relationship she had endured with Marcus. They shared quiet evenings, deep conversations, and a shared vision for a better world. Elara often reflected on her journey, not with bitterness, but with a sense of closure and gratitude. The pain of the past had forged her into the woman she had become, stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. She understood that true value was not measured by wealth or the fleeting opinions of others, but by the strength of her spirit and the capacity to rise above adversity. Her life was a testament to the sweet irony of destiny, a future built on her own terms, free from resentment, and filled with a profound, well-deserved happiness. Years passed, and Elara's star continued to rise, shining ever brighter in the firmament of philanthropy and business. Luminara Collective became a global powerhouse, recognized its innovative approach to art, and its unwavering commitment to diverse voices. The Eleanor Vance Foundation, under Elara's visionary leadership, expanded its initiatives, establishing art schools in underserved communities, funding groundbreaking research into art therapy, and creating international exchange programs that fostered cross-cultural understanding. Elara became a respected leader, a sought-after speaker, and a powerful advocate for social change, using her wealth and influence, not for personal gain, but for positive, lasting impact on a global scale. She was known not just for her immense fortune, but for her profound integrity, her genuine compassion, and her tireless dedication to her causes. Meanwhile, the lives of Marcus and Cassandra had spiraled into a cautionary tale. Their relationship, unable to withstand the weight of public scorn and their own internal resentments, finally crumbled. Cassandra's family, weary of the scandal and facing their own financial setbacks from poorly managed investments, gradually withdrew their support, leaving her without the lavish lifestyle she had always taken for granted. Marcus, his reputation irrevocably tarnished by his public betrayal and Elara's spectacular rise, found himself unemployable in his former industry. He drifted from one low-paying job to another, his once grand ambitions reduced to bitter memories. They eventually parted ways, each blaming the other for their downfall, their former opulence, replaced by a stark and undeniable struggle, a bitter irony to their once arrogant pronouncements. Elara, however, bore no resentment. The past was a closed chapter, a distant echo that no longer held power over her present. She had truly moved on, her heart healed, her spirit soaring. Her relationship with Liam flourished, growing deeper and more meaningful with each passing year. They built a life together, not defined by wealth, but by shared values, intellectual curiosity, and an unshakable bond of love and respect. They traveled, not to flaunt, but to explore, to learn, and to identify new avenues for their philanthropic endeavors. Liam, a success in his own right, admired Elara's strength and vision, standing beside her as an equal partner in life and purpose. Elara often reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point, the pain of betrayal, the public humiliation, the feeling of being a failure. These were no longer scars, but vital lessons. They had forged her resilience, sharpened her resolve, and ultimately revealed her true strength. She understood that her worth was never dependent on a man's love, a sister's approval, or the size of her bank account. It was inherent, a core truth that had always resided within her, simply waiting for the right catalyst to emerge. Her legacy was not just about the billions she possessed, but about the thousands of lives she touched, the artists she championed, the communities she uplifted, and the example she set. For others, she embodied the true meaning of self-worth, a dignity that could not be bought or sold, a resilience that could not be broken, and a capacity for compassion that transcended personal suffering. Her story became an inspiration, a testament to the fact that sometimes the most crushing blows can pave the way for the most extraordinary transformations. She had built a future entirely on her own terms, free from the shadows of the past, a woman defined by her strength, her purpose, and her unwavering spirit.